China. 9 commanders have been sacked in the latest round as Xi Jinping tightens his iron grip. Meanwhile, Donald Trump apparently asked Ukraine to give up land to Russia. He is preparing to meet President Putin, and the world is wondering if Zelensky will be at the table too. In West Asia, Israel strikes Gaza again. What happened to the ceasefire? In Japan, a historic first, they've got their first woman prime minister. Also bringing you the story of the great Louvre heist that has stunned France. Why the world is scrambling for rare earths which are neither rare nor new. How Amazon Web Services broke the internet and why students everywhere are yelling 6-7. All this and more lined up. First up, the headlines. France's former president Nicolas Sarkozy begins his 5-year jail sentence. Last month, he was found guilty of trying to get election funding from Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Sarkozy is the first former head of state to be sent to prison in modern French history. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan arrives in Kuwait. It's his first stop on a 3-day Gulf tour. From Kuwait, Erdogan will head to Doha. Ankara wants to acquire some of Qatar's used Eurofighter Typhoon jets as Turkey looks to modernize its air force. US Vice President J.D. Vance lands in Israel. His visit comes amid a fragile ceasefire in Gaza. Donald Trump has warned Hamas against breaching the truce. Vance is expected to meet the Israeli Prime Minister tomorrow. Egypt's intelligence chief is also in Israel to reinforce the truce. In the Sudan, a drone attack hits the area near the Khartoum airport. The strike took place just a day before the army-backed government was due to reopen the facility for domestic flights. The airport has been shut since fighting erupted in April 2023. Taiwan's exports hit a record high in September, rising by more than 30% from a year ago. It was driven by a high demand for artificial intelligence technology. Taiwan is a global powerhouse in manufacturing semiconductor chips which power AI. And Italy's birth rate is set to sink to a historic low this year. In 2024, the number of births in the country declined for the 16th year in a row. The birth rate is expected to drop further this year, aggravating Italy's demographic crisis. Diwali always lights up India. Our cities, our villages, our shops and malls, everything is lit up during this time. It's a period of hope, triumph and celebration. But this year, it's not just our homes that have lit up. It's also our economy. This Diwali, the Indian economy is shining, all thanks to you, the consumer. Let's show you the data prepared by the CAIT, that's the Confederation of All India Traders. Basically, a top traders' body. They have calculated India's total Diwali sales at 6.05 lakh crore rupees. 6 lakh crore rupees, that's around $68.7 billion. It's a record in Indian trading history. Out of this, $61 billion was spent on goods. Things like footwear, garments, electronics. The remaining was spent on services. And this marks a significant rise from last year. In 2024, during Diwali, Indians spent 4.25 lakh crore rupees on goods. This year, it's 5.4 lakh crores. That's a 27% jump in 1 year. In simple words, it's a spending bonanza. We'll tell you why this is good news for the Indian economy, but first some trends. This year, spending was focused on Indian goods, goods made inside our country. And this was championed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself. In a poll, 87% Indians picked Indian goods over foreign ones. And it shows in the sales. Made in India goods recorded a 25% bump. Trend number 2, the service sector is also booming. We're talking about things like eating out or movies. Restaurants and pubs reported an 8 to 20% surge in dining out. That's 8 to 20% higher than last year. And this is despite no GST relief for restaurants. And finally, trend number 3. It's not just Indian metros. Non-metros drove online sales this Diwali. More than 50% of the sales came from Tier 3 cities. But what does this bumper spending mean for the Indian economy? And can this momentum be sustained? Let's take a closer look. Consumer spending is key to India's growth. Consumer spending makes up 61% of our GDP. Imagine that. Almost 2/3 of our GDP is driven by consumers. If they spend, India grows fast. If they don't spend, India slows down. And we saw that last year. Inflation was inching higher, incomes were stagnant, so the Indian economy lost its momentum. From July to September in 2024, India grew by just 5.4%. That was the lowest in 7 quarters. It was also a warning sign for the policymakers. Our consumers needed some relief, which brings us to this year. We had a great monsoon this season, so the food supply and prices were not an issue. In September, India's inflation was just 1.54%. That's the lowest in 8 years. Add to that some tax cuts. First, the budget introduced income tax relief. No tax for up to 12 lakh rupees. Secondly, more importantly, the GST cuts. Earlier, we had 4 slabs of GST, the goods and services tax. We had 4 slabs, 5%, 12%, 18%, 28%. Out of these, 12 and 28% were removed. As a result, a lot of goods became cheaper, like electronics, cars, and daily essentials. They all became cheaper. Clearly, these tax cuts have boosted consumer spending. And global agencies have taken note. Last week, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, raised their India growth forecast. They increased it by 20 points to 6.6%. At the same time, they reduced next year's projection again by 20 points to 6.2%. And that sums up India's challenge. In the short run, these tax cuts will help. It's just basic economics. You cut taxes, you put more money in the hands of people. More money equals more spending. But the question is, how do you sustain it? Most experts are looking at the RBI, the Reserve Bank of India. The RBI cut lending rates once in June, but many are expecting one more cut this year, perhaps in the month of December, a rate cut. Now, as you know, a cut in lending rate boosts spending because lower interest equals cheaper loans, and cheaper loans can spur consumption. So that's one way to sustain this growth into 2026. But outside India, challenges are brewing. The biggest being the US tariffs. Donald Trump has imposed 50% tariffs on Indian goods. Those rates hit exports last month. Indian exports to the US dropped last month by almost 12% in September. That was a drop. In comparison, they had risen in August. They had risen by 7% in August. But there's a saving grace too. India's diversification is paying off. Exports to other markets grew by almost 11%. That's up from 6.6% the month before. And yet, worries remain. The tariffs complicate a lot more than trade. For example, it could put US investments in doubt. It could complicate the visa process for Indian workers. So the tariffs are a big headache for India. Otherwise, things are looking up. Inflation is under control. Spending is up. And growth is gathering pace. The key is to preserve and build on that. This weekend, 7 million Americans took to the streets. 7 million people. That's 1 in every 40 Americans. They came out to join a protest, the No Kings protest. It was a protest against President Donald Trump and his administration. Take a look at this first. Like you saw, protests broke out in all major U.S. cities from Chicago to New York, Washington, and even Los Angeles. Even smaller towns were not behind. 7 million people gathered across 2,700 cities and towns in America, which makes this demonstration historic in its scale. It was one of the largest single-day demonstrations in U.S. history, and even politicians joined in, including Democratic leaders, governors, and senators.
Here to remind people to be part of the voices that are saying no kings, no monarchy, democracy only.
We are here to tell our lawmakers that what's going on in our government is wrong. They must stop the abuses of this petulant president and his circle of sycophants.
Well, we want to show our support for democracy and for fighting what is right. I'm against the overreach of power. I believe in 3 branches of government. There's just been almost too many things to list.
Despite the size, the protests were peaceful. There were no mass arrests, no riots or violence. The last time the US saw such mass protests was in the year 2020. Those were about the killing of George Floyd. He was a black man who was killed after a police officer knelt on his neck. Those protests were about race, policing and justice. This one was about democracy itself. You see, No Kings is not an organization. It's more like a network, a patchwork of unions, advocacy groups and ordinary Americans. And all of them march for different reasons. Against the immigration raids, against the censorship of journalists, and against the militarization of cities. Also, it was all strung together by one idea, that America is not a monarchy. It cannot be run according to the wishes of one man.
Today, in the year 2025, in this dangerous moment in American history, our message is exactly the same. No, President Trump, we don't want you or any other king to rule us. Thank you very much, but we will maintain our democratic form of society. We will not move toward authoritarianism in America. We, the people, will rule.
So how did the US president respond to all of this? Well, in typical Trumpian fashion, instead of denying the charge, he leaned into it. On his Truth Social, President Trump shared an AI-generated video. It shows him flying a jet labeled King Trump. He uses it to drop excrement on protesters. Well, his administration was not too far behind. Vice President J.D. Vance shared a picture with Trump wearing a crown. The imagery was meant to be funny, but the symbolism was unmistakable. This is a president reveling in the idea of absolute power, and that explains why millions were on the streets. I guess the question is, what happens next? Because 7 million is not a small number. Protests of this scale would shake up any government in the world. The White House may be brushing it off, but there are signs that the impact could run deep. Let's start with the politics. The midterm elections are less than a year away. Many of these protests took place in crucial swing states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona. Those are the same states that decided the last 2 elections. If even a fraction of these protesters turn their frustration into votes, Republicans could lose control of the US Congress, and Trump knows that. He came to power less than a year ago with a historic mandate. Millions of people voted for him, and now millions are on the streets protesting against him. His approval ratings are down too. They've dropped to 37% as Americans remain worried about jobs and inflation. But there's also a reality check here. Mass movements do not always translate into political change. Again, take the George Floyd protests, for example. They were huge, but many of their reforms stalled in Congress. The difference this time is that the issue is political at its core. It's about the presidency itself. And that makes it harder to ignore. Some Republicans are beginning to worry about optics as well. If the image of Trump wearing a crown starts defining the party, it could turn off centrist voters. And that is why analysts say that Trump should be worried. These protests cannot force him out of office, but they reveal something deeper. A country that is losing patience with the idea of strongman politics. The streets may not topple the president, but they can definitely shake the system that keeps him there. In China, President Xi Jinping has launched yet another purge. He has removed 9 top military officers, and this has become a familiar pattern in his regime. Xi Jinping has been in power for more than 12 years now, and in this period, he has sacked millions of people, including thousands from the military. In the latest round, a high-ranking general has been purged. His name is He Weidong. You may have heard of him. It's the same general who's been missing since March, and we reported about his disappearance on this show. And in China, that's often the first clue. When a top official disappears, it usually means one thing: they are on their way out. And now it's official. Beijing has confirmed his sacking. They confirmed it last week. As always, they did not say where General He was or what led to his dismissal. That silence is routine. But the removal is not. You see, General He was not just another name in uniform. He was one of Xi Jinping's closest allies. They rose through the ranks together. In fact, Xi Jinping personally appointed him to top positions. At the age of 68, General He sat on the Politburo. That's the second highest body of the Communist Party. He was also vice chair of the Central Military Commission, the CMC. The CMC commands China's military, and that post made him one of the country's most powerful commanders. In the chain of command, General He came right after President Xi, who heads the Central Military Commission. That's how powerful he was, and now he has been booted out. The question is why? Why was he sacked? Well, China says, and I'm quoting, General He committed serious violations of party discipline. They also accuse him of quote-unquote grave duty-related crimes. These involved exceptionally large sums of money. China's defense ministry has called the case extremely serious. They say the impact was, and I'm quoting again, profoundly detrimental. And this points towards a major shakeup in the PLA, the People's Liberation Army. That's what the Chinese military is called, the PLA. The shakeup began some 2 years ago in 2023. That's when Xi Jinping sacked top officials from the Rocket Force. It was quite an embarrassing case. The Rocket Force handles China's nuclear arsenal. An investigation found water instead of fuel in their rockets. This was a glaring example of graft. It compromised China's missile systems. It triggered a sweeping crackdown. More than a dozen senior military figures were purged. The list includes 2 former defense ministers, 2 commanders in the aerospace sector, key members of the Rocket Force, and now as many as 9 senior military officials, including General He. Apart from him, another prominent dismissal is that of Admiral Miao Hua. He headed the political work department of the CMC. Now, Admiral Miao was one of the top political voices in the PLA. Now he's gone, along with senior officers in the Rocket Force, China's paramilitary force, and officials from both the Army and the Navy. Like I said, 9 senior officials in total. It's a sweeping purge. It covers all key wings of China's defense setup, the missile force, the army, the navy, the political leadership in the PLA. This is the largest purge since Mao's rule ended in 1976. And it has raised a major question. Is Xi Jinping struggling to control his own military? He took power more than a decade ago. One of his first moves was to clean up the PLA. He removed anyone who posed a threat. He filled the ranks with loyalists, with generals who owed their rise directly to him. But all these years later, more than 12 years later, his cleanup has not ended. Even loyalists like General He are being sacked. Consider this figure. Since he took office, Xi Jinping has removed nearly 20% of China's generals appointed by him. Nearly 20% of his own appointees have been removed. Now, there are two ways to look at this. One, the constant purges highlight his grip on power. Even if you're loyal to the Chinese president, you're not necessarily safe if you're in the wrong. And he treats everyone equally. That's one way to see this. And two, this reveals the gaps in China's military. The president wants a force that can fight and win wars, a military that can take Taiwan by force if necessary. But constant purges do not build strength. They create uncertainty. They create instability. If President Xi cannot trust the men he appointed and promoted, then who will be left to lead his army? Every time Volodymyr Zelensky walks into the White House, it's a coin toss. One time it's a shouting match, the next it is camaraderie, and this time it was something in between. Zelensky arrived at the White House on Friday night, and I must add he came wearing a suit. He met President Trump. There were some jokes, even compliments. Take a look.
President Zelensky of Ukraine has endured a lot. I mean, he really has. He's endured a lot, and we've endured it with him. And I think he looks beautiful in his jacket.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I hope people notice. It's actually very stylish. I like it.
President Trump.
Beautiful jacket, Trump said, but Zelensky was not fishing for compliments. He was in Washington to ask for missiles, the Tomahawk missiles. Trump had talked about giving them to Kiev, so Zelensky arrived on an optimistic note. But a phone call seems to have ruined his chances. You see, when Zelensky was on his way to the US, Trump got a call from Moscow, from Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. So Trump spent 90 minutes talking to Putin. According to aides, the tone was cordial. According to Moscow, the conversation was constructive. But for Ukraine, it was alarming and damaging. Because hours later, Trump told reporters that he was ready to meet Putin in Budapest, the capital of Hungary. The meeting would happen in the coming weeks. The agenda was to end the war in Ukraine, or is to end the war in Ukraine, basically a follow-up of what was discussed in Alaska. And that's when things went south. So Friday's White House meeting was meant to smooth things over. Instead, it blew it up. Because Trump came in determined to broker another deal of the century. He just wanted a simple headline: Trump ends the Ukraine war. That's what he wanted. But simplicity has never been Ukraine's reality. Reports suggest that Trump pressed Zelensky to make, and I'm quoting, make territorial concessions. In other words, he told Ukraine to give up land, essentially all of Donbass. That's more than 50,000 square kilometers. It's over 20% of Ukrainian territory. Trump wants Zelensky to give it up to Russia. Zelensky tried to show him maps, but reports suggest that Trump tossed them aside. He said it was too complicated. He also had a warning for Ukraine that Putin will destroy them if there is no deal. This made Zelensky visibly tense. He said he wanted peace. And by the end of the meeting, Trump was fuming. Zelensky was stone-faced, and aides were whispering about damage control.
In my opinion, they should stop the war immediately. You go by the battle line wherever it is, otherwise it's too complicated. You'll never be able to figure it out. You stop at the battle line, and both sides should go home, go to their families, stop the killing, and that should be it. Stop right now at the battle line. I told that to President Zelensky. I told it to President Putin. Thank you very much, everybody.
We trust United States. We trust president that he wants to finish this war, and it's difficult. It's very tough solution. It's understandable why.
The aftermath left everyone guessing. Will Zelensky be invited to Budapest? Again, no clear answer, but it's unlikely. So let's tally it up. Here is what Zelensky wanted: long-range Tomahawk missiles, a firm US commitment to continued military aid, and a role in future Trump-Putin talks. That's what he wanted. But here's what he got: a vague promise of dialogue, a suggestion to freeze the lines where they are, and a president who suggested that Donbass should be divided.
Again, Michael.
Should happen with the Donbass region.
Let it be cut the way it is. It's cut up right now. I think 78% of the land is already taken by Russia. You leave it the way it is right now. They can negotiate something later on down the line. But I said, cut and stop at the battle line, go home, stop fighting, stop killing people.
And if the geopolitics weren't strange enough, the press briefing made it worse. A reporter texted White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. He asked, who chose Budapest as a summit site? Do you know what her reply was? Your mom did. That's what she wrote to him. And then she posted the exchange on X, adding that the reporter was a quote-unquote left-wing hack. So Trump may want to end wars in Europe, but his press secretary is picking battles with reporters. Meanwhile, Hungary says it's prepared, ready to host a Trump-Putin meeting. At the same time, a previously scheduled meeting may not go ahead. It may not happen, a meeting between the US Secretary of State and the Russian Foreign Minister. So the road to Budapest is already rocky, and Zelensky is heading off to London. He will meet his European allies on Friday.
We will hold a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing on Friday, partly in person and partly virtually, which will gather some of us in London, and President Volodymyr Zelensky will be there. And so we continue to advance.
The war has dragged on for more than 3 years. Nearly a fifth of Ukraine remains under occupation, and now even their strongest ally seems unsure of which side of the map to stand on. So for Ukraine, the coin is still spinning. Heads, peace, tails, another winter of war, and no one, least of all Zelensky, knows which way it will fall.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Days after a heated war on X over Bengaluru's infrastructure, Biocon founder Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw met with Karnataka's Deputy CM D.K. Shivakumar. Following the meeting, Shivakumar said that they had an engaging discussion on Bengaluru's growth, innovation and the path ahead for Karnataka's growth story. Meanwhile, Congress government sources have revealed that the Deputy CM has assured Shaw of visits to key areas in the city to engage with industry on improving infrastructure and advised avoiding controversial statements. Meanwhile, industrialist and ex-Infosys CFO Mohandas Pai has criticized the state government, alleging that those questioning poor infrastructure in Bengaluru are being targeted. Rohini Swami brings you more.
Let me ask you a straight question, Mr. Pai. Now, this when they have, the trolls have been saying, and they speak about saying, why do you speak up when it talks about infrastructure? Why don't you do it with other governments? Why do it with only the Congress government? Why have you not done with the previous governments? Or for that matter, even Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw, and question that whether you're like Kannadigas at all. How do you react?
I think they're all ill-informed and bigoted. We have been talking about infrastructure for the last 15-20 years. I spoken about corruption in the government 15 years back, 10 years back, in the Bommai government. In the Bommai government, we've spoken about infrastructure. We've gone and met Chief Minister Bommai. We've gone and met everybody. It's a continuous thing. It's nothing that has happened just now.
Yeah.
Only thing is today it's got worse, and there are a lot more people angry and upset. For example, I spoke about the need for expanding the road on Bellary Road next to the palace, next to Palace Orchards. It was done. We spoke about expanding the road, which is that Hebbal flyover with the Bombay government. They started the work. Now it's getting completed with 2 more loops. Okay. Peripheral road, we've spoken about it for long. We've spoken about expanding the Nandi road for long. I mean, it goes back 30, 35 years. This is not a today's problem. We spoke about expanding the Hosur road. We all went on the Hosur road in 1995 and started cleaning up the road, building the road. I think people have forgotten. These are all not Kannadigas.
After Biocon founder Kiran Majumdar-Shaw meets Chief Minister Siddaramaiah on Bengaluru's infrastructure issues. Sources told CNN News 18 that Kiran Majumdar-Shaw has highlighted key infrastructural concerns in Bengaluru. This, of course, includes issues with roads, as has also been highlighted by Mohandas Pai, garbage and the city's overall infrastructure. The Chief Minister has now requested Shaw and the industry's cooperation in improving Bengaluru's infrastructure. He's urged all stakeholders to speak carefully on these issues, as their statements carry significant weightage among the public and investors who are looking to invest in not just Bengaluru but Karnataka as a whole. Shaw has in fact emphasized the public outrage over poor infrastructure and roads. She's called for urgent attention. Rohini Swami has been tracking that story for us. She joins me on the phone line as well. Good morning to you, Rohini. If you could take us through the response that's come in after Kiran Majumdar-Shaw highlighted all of those issues, and how she has been at the forefront now tackling this problem after Mohandas Pai was attacked.
Well, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw and Mohandas Pai have been some of the loudest voices that we have seen, especially when it comes to telling the Karnataka government as to what the pain points are in Bengaluru, especially in its infrastructure. And for the fact that they have been explaining through examples as well. When Kiran Majumdar-Shaw spoke about a Chinese visitor who had come into Bengaluru and asked whether there's any engagement with the government and infrastructure projects at all, because the way the garbage that was seen in the city as well and the pothole roads itself clearly shows that there needs to be a lot of work done. This is something that she's been highlighting, and as well, Mohandas Pai also speaking about it very clearly and telling the government also that these are not criticism of the government, it is criticism of governance and constructive criticism. The fact that they all are looking at building Bengaluru, the people who have been a part of the Bengaluru growth story, there have been people who are from Infosys to Biocon and several other companies. And Bengaluru, if you remember also, the public sector undertakings like BEML and HAL, all of them build Bengaluru as its brand is today. And that is why it is important to keep the name of Bengaluru as one of the global cities and for investors to come in. Here, this meeting with the Deputy Chief Minister, Mr. D.K. Shivakumar, as well as the Chief Minister, Mr. Siddaramaiah, also very clearly shows that they are serious in terms of...
Let's take stock of the other war, the one in West Asia. After 2 years of fighting and more than 60,000 civilian deaths, there was a ceasefire announced last week, brokered by Donald Trump. The guns fell silent, the hostages began returning home. There was talk of redeveloping Gaza. So for a brief moment, it seemed to be working. But the hope was short-lived. On Sunday, Israel launched airstrikes on Gaza. Dozens of people were killed and aid was temporarily halted. Today, no fighting has been reported. The ceasefire is set to be back in place. But can this fragile peace hold for long? Our next report has more.
The ceasefire in Gaza was meant to bring relief. Instead, by Sunday, the war returned to the skies. Israel accused Hamas of killing 2 of its soldiers near Rafah. It said they fired an anti-tank missile and opened fire on its troops. Within hours, Israeli jets launched a wave of strikes. Explosions lit up the sky in Gaza, and hospitals reported more than 40 people killed in a single day. This was the highest toll since the truce began on October 10th. Hamas denied the accusations. It said it had no contact with fighters in Rafah. It called Israel's claims flimsy pretexts to restart the war. Israel said its forces were attacked thrice.
Today, the IDF announced terrorists fired an anti-tank missile and gunfire towards our troops operating in the area of Rafah to dismantle terrorist infrastructure, all in accordance with the ceasefire agreement. Now, in response, the IDF began striking in the area to eliminate the threat.
The fallout was immediate. Israel announced it had halted aid deliveries into Gaza. It linked any resumption to Hamas upholding the agreement. By evening, Israel said it was renewing enforcement of the deal. Both sides said they remained committed to the agreement. But the damage was done. The ceasefire, less than 2 weeks old, had already been pushed to the edge. The agreement, brokered by the United States, was meant to change everything. Fighting would stop. Hostages and prisoners would be exchanged. Aid would flow into Gaza, and talks on the territory's future would begin. Some of that has happened. Hamas has released 20 living hostages. But it has returned only 13 bodies out of 28. Israel says the rest must be returned before the next phase of talks can begin. Hamas says they need heavy equipment to retrieve the bodies. Aid remains one of the most contentious issues. Israel controls most of Gaza's crossings. Aid deliveries resumed once Israel said it was enforcing the ceasefire again. But the United Nations says supplies are still below agreed levels. Access remains difficult, especially in Gaza's north. Washington is trying to keep the deal alive. U.S. President Donald Trump said the ceasefire is still in effect, but he warned that Hamas would be wiped out if it violated the agreement.
We made a deal with Hamas that, they're going to be very good, they're going to behave, they're going to be nice, and if they're not, we're going to go and we're going to eradicate them if we have to.
Washington is now doubling down on diplomacy. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has arrived in Israel. He will be meeting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump's envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner are already on the ground. They are working to stabilize the truce and push it into its next phase. That includes disarming Hamas. But Sunday's violence has shown how fragile the truce really is. Each strike risks unraveling the deal. Each accusation chips away at the trust needed to hold it together. For now, the ceasefire stands, at least on paper. But the calm is uneasy. And the question is no longer whether the ceasefire will hold, but how long can it survive?
Our next story takes us to Japan, a country known for its technology, economic power, and rich cultural influence. But today, Japan is in the headlines for something else. It has got its first woman prime minister. The first ever woman prime minister, her name is Sanae Takaichi. She's a hardline conservative, and she now leads the world's fifth largest economy. Her election comes at a tricky time, a period of political uncertainty in Tokyo. Japan has had 5 prime ministers in 5 years. Governments have struggled to survive, and public trust has collapsed. The last prime minister was Shigeru Ishiba. He was forced to resign after his coalition fell apart. His party is called the LDP, the Liberal Democratic Party. It's the longest ruling party in Japan. Recently, it lost its coalition partner of more than 25 years. This was due to political scandals and conservative policies. So the coalition collapsed. The government did not have enough seats to claim majority in parliament. They had to look for a new ally. They built a new alliance with a smaller party, but they're still short of a majority in parliament. And that is what Prime Minister Takaichi inherits. A weak government, a divided parliament, and a voter base that is fast losing faith. Despite these odds, her rise is historic because politics in Japan has always been a man's world. The imbalance runs deep. Look at the gender gap index. Out of a list of 148 countries, Japan ranks 118. That's the lowest among the G7, or the group of 7 countries. Now look at the lower house of their parliament. Last year, only about 10% of the lawmakers were women. In the G7, the average was 30%. In the ruling LDP, the ruling party, the LDP, only 13% of the lawmakers are women, and this is across both houses of parliament. And this disparity is evident not just in numbers, it is also visible in Japan's political choices. In 2023, Japan sent a male representative to an otherwise all-women summit, a summit on women's empowerment. They sent a man for it. It reveals how deeply male-dominated Japanese politics is, and that makes Takaichi's rise so significant. Her personal story makes it even more remarkable. She was a drummer in her youth. She says she drew political inspiration from former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. She often says Thatcher's grit and quote-unquote womanly warmth shaped her politics. Today, many in Japan call Takaichi their own Iron Lady. She is a political hardliner. She was a close ally of the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, and she remains a strong proponent of his economic strategy. She is also called a China hawk. She has criticized Beijing's military buildup, and she wants Japan to strengthen its own defense. Takaichi also plans to tighten immigration laws. This is a message aimed at nationalist voters. On gender equality, her record is mixed. She had promised a Nordic-style cabinet, the kind that you see in Finland or Norway, where women hold up to 60% of the ministerial posts. But when she appointed her ministers, only 2 out of 18 were women. So it's a start, but it's far from the breakthrough that many had hoped for. Her arrival has also shaken the markets. Japanese stocks surged to record highs today on expectations of big government spending. Investors call it the Takaichi trade. But the yen fell to its lowest level in 6 days, and she will have to hit the ground running because a big test is coming for Japan's new prime minister, a visit from US President Donald Trump. That's expected later this month, the visit. So Japan is entering a new political era, one that will test how far its institutions, its policies, and its people are willing to adapt. Sane Takaichi's arrival may be symbolic, but can she deliver substance? Can she shape a future that matches her country's ambitions? We will keep track of this one for you. It was a robbery no one thought was possible, not in broad daylight, not inside the world's most famous museum, but in just 4 minutes, a team of thieves pulled off a heist that stunned France and indeed the whole world. They bypassed guards, they broke through layers of security, and they walked away with jewels once worn by queens and empresses. The Louvre is home to the Mona Lisa. It is a fortress of art and history, and it was breached like never before. Now, investigators are racing against time. The thieves remain a step ahead, and the world is left asking, how did a gang break into a global landmark and vanish before anyone could stop them? Here's our report.
It began like any other Sunday morning in Paris. Tourists lined up outside the Louvre. Cameras ready, eager to capture the Mona Lisa. But by 9:30 a.m., the world's most visited museum had turned into the scene of a real-life heist. A truck rolled up quietly on a street beside the River Seine. 4 masked men stepped out. No guns, no shouting, just power tools and a plan. From the truck, they extended a mechanical ladder up to a first-floor window. That window led straight into the Gallery of Apollo. It is the glittering home of France's crown jewels, visited by millions each year. The glass was sliced open within seconds. The thieves climbed in. Guards were threatened with angle grinders. Staff activated security protocols and began evacuating visitors nearby. And the gang went to work. Their mission was clear: to loot 2 reinforced display cases filled with 19th century royal treasures. Among them, an emerald necklace gifted by Emperor Napoleon I to his wife, a sapphire diadem once worn by Queen Marie Amélie, and a brooch that belonged to Empress Eugénie. The heist was surgical. For minutes inside, 8 priceless artifacts gone. A 9th, Empress Eugénie's golden crown, slipped from their hands. It was found later, damaged, on the ground outside. The escape was just as calculated. 2 scooters waited below. The thieves descended and disappeared into Paris traffic. Before leaving, they even tried to set fire to their truck. But a museum employee stopped the flames in time. The museum was sealed off within minutes. Soldiers surrounded the glass pyramid, tourists were evacuated behind police tape, and across France, outrage spread. Officials admitted security had failed. France's interior minister spoke of a great vulnerability. A government audit allegedly revealed much of the gallery had no CCTV. Union said hundreds of security jobs had been cut. And one senator said a local alarm system had been broken for weeks. Police believe the heist was planned by an organized crime network. 60 investigators are now tracking CCTV, escape routes, and possible exits from the country. Experts warn they are racing against time. The jewels could soon be dismantled, the gold melted, and history scattered across the black market. Reactions have poured in. President Emmanuel Macron called the theft an attack on France's history. Meanwhile, opposition leaders have labeled it a national humiliation. And as the investigation unfolds, the internet has done what it always does: turned the drama into memes. Social media has been flooded with jokes comparing the thieves to characters from Lupin and Ocean's 11. But beneath the humor lies a deeper concern. The Louvre has seen theft before. In 1911, the Mona Lisa was stolen by an Italian worker who hid inside the museum overnight. And in 1998, another painting was stolen in broad daylight and has never been found. Yet none match the scale of this daylight robbery. For now, the thieves remain at large. The fate of the jewels is uncertain. A manhunt is underway, and one question haunts Paris. How did 4 men steal part of France's royal past and vanish without a trace?
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Days after a heated war on X over Bengaluru's infrastructure, Biocon founder Kiran Majumdar-Shaw met with Karnataka's Deputy CM D.K. Shivakumar. Following the meeting, Shivakumar said that they had an engaging discussion on Bengaluru's growth, innovation and the path ahead for Karnataka's growth story. Meanwhile, Congress government sources have revealed that the Deputy CM has a short show of visits to key areas in the city to engage with industry on improving infrastructure and advised avoiding controversial statements. Meanwhile, industrialist and ex-Infosys CFO Mohandas Pai has criticized the state government, alleging that those questioning poor infrastructure in Bengaluru are being targeted. Rohini Swami brings you more.
Let me ask you a straight question, Mr. Pai. Now, this when the trolls have been saying, and they speak about saying, why do you speak up when it talks about infrastructure? Why don't you do it with other governments? Why do it with only the Congress government? Why have you not done with the previous governments? Or for that matter, even Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, and question that whether you are Kannadigas at all. How do you react?
I think they're all ill-informed and bigoted. We have been talking about infrastructure for the last 15-20 years. I've spoken about corruption in the government 15 years back, 10 years back, in the Bommai government. In the Bommai government, we've spoken about infrastructure. We've gone and met Chief Minister Bommai. We've gone and met everybody. The continuous thing is nothing that has happened just now.
Yeah.
Only thing is today it's got worse, and there are a lot more people angry and upset. For example, I spoke about the need for expanding the road on Bellary Road next to the palace, next to Palace Orchards. It was done. We spoke about expanding the road, which is that Hebbal flyover with the Bommai government. They started the work. Now it's getting completed with 2 more loops. Okay. Peripheral road, we've spoken about it for long. We've spoken about expanding the Nandi road for long. I mean, it goes back 30, 35 years. This is not today's problem. We spoke about expanding the Hosur road. We all went on the Hosur road in 1995 and started cleaning up the road, building the road. I think people have forgotten. These are all not Kannadigas.
After Biocon founder Kiran Majumdar-Shaw meets Chief Minister Siddaramaiah on Bengaluru's infrastructure issues. Sources told CNN News 18 that Kiran Majumdar-Shaw has highlighted key infrastructural concerns in Bengaluru. This, of course, includes issues with roads, as has also been highlighted by Mohandas Pai, garbage and the city's overall infrastructure. The Chief Minister has now requested Shaw and the industry's cooperation in improving Bengaluru's infrastructure. He's urged all stakeholders to speak carefully on these issues, as their statements carry significant weightage among the public and investors who are looking to invest in not just Bengaluru but Karnataka as a whole. Shaw has in fact emphasized the public outrage over poor infrastructure and roads. She's called for urgent attention. Rohini Swami has been tracking that story for us. She joins me on the phone line as well. Good morning to you, Rohini. If you could take us through the response that's come in after Kiran Majumdar-Shaw highlighted all of those issues, and how she has been at the forefront now tackling this problem after Mohandas Pai was attacked.
Well, Kiran Majumdar-Shaw and Mohandas Pai have been some of the loudest voices that we have seen, especially when it comes to telling the Karnataka government as to what the pain points are in Bengaluru, especially in its infrastructure. And for the fact that they have been explaining through examples as well. When Kiran Majumdar-Shaw spoke about a Chinese visitor who had come into Bengaluru and asked whether there's any engagement with the government and infrastructure projects at all, because the way the garbage that was seen in the city as well and the pothole roads itself clearly shows that there needs to be a lot of work done. This is something that she's been highlighting, and as well, Mohandas Pai also speaking about it very clearly and telling the government also that these are not criticism of the government, it is criticism of governance and constructive criticism. The fact that they all are looking at building Bengaluru, the people who have been a part of the Bengaluru growth story, there have been people who are from Infosys to Biocon and several other companies. And Bengaluru, if you remember also, the public sector undertakings like BEML and HAL, all of them build Bengaluru as its brand is today. And that is why it is important to keep the name of Bengaluru as one of the global cities and for investors to come in. Here, this meeting with the Deputy Chief Minister, Mr. D.K. Shivkumar, as well as the Chief Minister, Mr. Siddaramaiah, also very clearly shows that they are serious in terms of engagement. The government also saying that we will ensure and we will look at these places which are being highlighted. There's been a paper also, we were told, that was submitted about the various issues that need to be addressed in Bengaluru specifically. And Siddaramaiah has assured to Shaw as well as the industry as well that things will be looked into. DCM also, Shivkumar also saying that let's not engage in a public spat. Let's get into working with constructive criticism and work.
Every generation has faced a moment when the youth seem to have collectively lost their minds. For boomers, it was Beatlemania. For Gen X, it was MTV and punk rock. For millennials, it was random internet challenges. For Gen Z, it was the Skibidi toilet. And for Gen Alpha, it is 6-7. Yes, 6-7, two ordinary numbers that now hold the power to disrupt classrooms. If you walked into one lately, you may have already heard it. A teacher says, turn to page 67, and suddenly the entire class erupts. Books are slammed, chairs are shaken, children scream, 6-7. Some schools have gone so far as to ban the phrase entirely. Others have tried to co-opt it. But the more adults fight it, the stronger it grows. Because let's be honest, we've all been there. Nothing delights kids more than rebellion. But where did 6-7 even come from? Well, the origin story is pretty weird. It began with a 2024 rap song called Doot Doot 67. The chorus repeated the numbers, then came TikTok. The sound was mashed into basketball highlights. A high school player added to it, and within weeks it became an internet sensation. Kids parroted the phrase everywhere. Ask 10 kids what 67 means and you will get 10 different answers. Maybe even a few laughs. Some will say it means so-so. Others insist it's just a vibe. Most would say it's just funny, and that's, I guess, the whole point. 6-7 doesn't need meaning. It's what linguists call a semantic bleached phrase. That means words that are stripped of definition. All there is left is shared recognition. Basically, it's a big inside joke. If you get the joke, even when there isn't one, you're in. You're part of the so-called cool club. Now, if you were born before 2000, you may be wondering, what does this even mean? Does it even make sense? Well, it doesn't. Every generation invents this kind of nonsense. The 6-7 slang is not just for fun. It is social architecture, apparently. It builds walls and bridges simultaneously. It's a way to bond with your peers, but it also keeps your parents and teachers clueless. And it's not happening in isolation. It's part of a larger wave of what is known as brain rot humor. Jokes that are deliberately meaningless. Think terms like skibbity, or making up words like delulu, which means delusional. In a hyper-connected world, nonsense is the new common tongue. The meaning may be optional, but participation is everything. So should you scream out 6-7 with the kids too? Well, we say don't sweat it. It's 6-7 today. It will be something else tomorrow. That's how fleeting internet trends are. By the time you get it, it may already be out of fashion and you will just end up looking out of place again. And that is, I guess, the point too. Trends come and go. It's chaotic, it's fleeting, maybe even a little bit confusing, especially for parents and teachers, but that's exactly the point. Every generation has its own shorthand for growing up, and right now, this 6-7 is Gen Alphas.
Co-powered by Bank of Baroda के संग त्योहार की उमंग in association with get up to 50% off on making charges. Kalyan Jewelers.
Hello and welcome to the late night edition with me, Ayushman Singh Jambal. Big breaking news coming in at the top of the bulletin, where the central government has issued now a Gazette notification on the citations of gallantry awardees of the Defence Forces from different operations, including Operation Sindoor. The gallantry award citations included in the Gazette are mainly of Indian Air Force and Indian Army personnel. So the braves of Operation Sindoor being honoured by the Modi government, ladies and gentlemen. That is the big piece of news that's coming in. And several Veer Chakra awardees have been named in this gallantry award citation.